He would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsey?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation
we do have a lot
that went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsey?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on longstanding work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings
Sorry. Stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. if she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish one thing so important, in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead. Fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400,
President
500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment
to.
that
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, well, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle, they took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election.
That polling station in Cincinnati, Ohio. Meantime, in the last hour, former President Barack Obama has taken to social media to call on American voters to cast their votes for Kamala Harris.
Is going to be close. In some states, just a handful of votes in every precinct could decide the winner. So you need to get out there and vote. So tell your family, talk to your neighbors, make a plan, go to the polls with your friends and vote. Vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
Well, the first official result of the election has already been returned by a small town in New Hampshire. The 6 voters of Dixville Notch started to cast their ballots at midnight, and the count was completed just 15 minutes later. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris each won 3 votes as the town continued its tradition dating back to 1960 of being the first place in the United States to declare their votes. Well, the result of the election could come down to a few 100,000 votes in the swing states where it's simply too close to call. Our correspondent Tom Cheshire has more.
Yeah, loads of votes being cast today, around 160 million we expect. It's all across the USA, 50 states. But really, we don't actually have to pay attention to all of them. We've been talking about battleground states, but just for the context, what you've got over America is 36 states who have voted the same way for the last 6 elections. It's the equivalent of a safe Conservative or Labour seat when it comes to UK general elections. That is repeated. So, you know, go to Kansas and we can look at how they voted over the last few occasions. And if you look at that, it is just red, red, red. It is Republican. In fact, they've voted Republican all the way since 1968. Compare that on the other
Attack.
really, really
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where Bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this, you talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The president of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Right. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really
62 votes, which is just short. If Harris performs according to her polling, give her these states, and she ends up over that 279. Now, that is a what-if scenario. It really, really could go either way. And it's still so uncertain because we're talking about the battleground states. But here's what Iowa has been doing recently, and this is really, really surprising according to recent polling. Donald Trump won Iowa pretty handily in 2016 and 2020. But if you look at the recent polling, there might be a slight lead for Harris. And this is a state that no one really thought would be in the mix in terms of a battleground state. So there are still surprises that could happen over the course of the night. There's going to be lots and lots of results, but do focus on those 7 battleground states and keep an eye out for some surprises.
Tom, thank you. We'll make sure to tune in to watch Mark and Yalda and the rest of the team this evening. Special coverage of the results starts from 10 p.m. until we have a winner. You are watching Sky News.
Them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country. country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No judge
Republican,
looked at it.
and said there
They
was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time
I
is up.
think we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
Yes.
to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now, an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis, many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so, absolutely, I said then, I now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters because it I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation. And now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting
that they're weak.
Turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more. Done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe, like I did with NATO. They paid billions and hundreds of billions of dollars when I
300,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania, how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and now, please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban, The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 terrorists, Taliban terrorists released. And get this, no, get this. And the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with
thank
the
you.
Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move
And
on.
these people did the worst withdrawal and, in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words. So I'm
I
asking.
don't know. I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently over the course of his career attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to Black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young Black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first Black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country, we see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up.
I want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice
and
President
move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's turn
Trump,
back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump,
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
She
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move on
to
to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's what her plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump,
no, the
President
former
Trump,
president has
no,
said
I'm
something
sorry.
twice I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry.
I
We're
just
going
need
to
to
move on,
respond
Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this
multiple
is
times.
now your
Yeah.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up, they wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan.
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
Vice
Pass this
President
prologue
Harris,
in
thank
terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue
Well,
that's important for a
She
lot
made a
of
mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to give.
President
People
Trump-
are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. They're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
Tonight, the time has come for closing statements, and Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
Have fun.
Thank you.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout.
We want to unite and represent America, and she will take care of all people.
Her agenda is for reproductive rights, for immigrants, for LGBT, for the economy. So yes, she represents the people.
If this is not a movement for the history books, I don't know what is. The way that she has galvanized voters across age, across race, across socioeconomic spectrum, and brought us all to Philadelphia tonight on the cusp of making history is truly amazing.
God bless America. Performances from Lady Gaga, Ricky Martin, and an address by Oprah Winfrey.
Every single vote, every one is going to matter.
Harris practiced as she preached, door knocking in Pennsylvania. Her chances could rest on how many women she can turn out, especially older and independent voters.
I'm a Republican. I am voting for Kamala because she stands for everything right, truth, justice, and I'm just so sick of the hatred.
They really do think that democracy's at a break, and that would be devastating. And I'm also for women's rights.
Harris signed off in Philadelphia, the birthplace of the United States. In the coming hour, the people of this country will determine where it goes next. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Philadelphia.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump's campaign finished in the state of Michigan before his appearance and received a boost thanks to the endorsement of influential podcaster Joe Rogan, who has a largely young male audience. And when Trump did take to the stage, he reminded voters how close he came to death during the assassination attempt on his life earlier in the campaign. Our US correspondent James Matthews has this report.
We are approaching journey's end. For this political performer, last night was a late night curtain call.
This is the last one that we're going to have to do. And doing 4 of these in one day is a little difficult, but not really, because the love in every one of them has been incredible, just like that. So it makes it a lot easier.
This was earlier in Reading, Pennsylvania. It is a movement that Trump built. They've seen his rise, fall, and rise again.
In one word, what's the single most important issue for you in this election?
The border, safety,
Freedom.
immigration, life,
The economy.
freedom.
Business.
It was a final day swing through the swing states, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and to Grand Rapids in Michigan, where Donald Trump ended his previous campaigns. None had been as tumultuous as this.
I love salt. Wait a minute, I smell salt.
Floating garbage. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
We're leading in every state.
And I won't forget the men who
This doesn't have the celebrity of the Harris campaign. It's an effort built around its central character. A central demographic is the young male voter.
We've been left behind. yeah. We've been kicked down, as Oliver Anthony put it, and are all kicking us while we're down.
What he's done in the past has definitely been good for America, and you can't hold grudges on everybody for so long.
He can be a little bombastic at times, but I'm willing to give him a pass on that because of what he stands for.
Scholarships and job opportunities, so much less if you're white and Christian, because they will turn you down because of your skin color.
Trump, baby, number one.
The Donald Trump phenomenon has created this, a movement that's propelled him towards the verge of a second presidency. This is how U.S. political history looks now.
Vote, vote, vote.
How it looks after today is the big uncertainty, win or lose. James Matthews, Sky News, in Reading, Pennsylvania.
Well, the result of the election could come down to a few 100,000 votes in the swing states where it's simply too close to call. Our correspondent Tom Cheshire has more on that.
There's going to be 160 million votes, we think, being cast in this election. But actually, look, we can see some. We've already got the first 6 from Dixville in New Hampshire already appearing on that map. There's obviously a long way to go. We've got 50 states here, but actually we don't need to pay attention to all 50 really. That's because some seats are safe Conservative seats in a UK general election. Have a look at Kansas, for instance, and look at what's been happening. So this is the 2020 election, but if we go back in time and look at every election since 2008, you can see it has gone Republican every time. Red is voted Republican since 1968. Or let's do it the other way around and go to a Democrat stronghold, Minnesota, up in the north. Again, look at this. We go back in time, you can see that has been blue actually since 1976. 6 states in the US that have voted the same way in the last 6 elections. And that's why the swing states become so crucial. These battleground states here in gray, you can see them. If we look at all of that, that is the ones we are really in those states. Well, these are the battleground states, and this shows the average lead over all the polls that we've been looking at. If it's on the left, that is in favor of Harris. It's on the right in red, that is in favor of Donald Trump. So if you look at that, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, they seem to be trending towards Kamala Harris, but Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, the polling there favors Donald Trump. But the really important thing here is these are not big leads. 1.7 there, that's the biggest, and that is within the margin of error. So all of these could go to Donald Trump. All of them could go to Kamala Harris. We really can't say. But let's say we do fill it in and see what's happening in terms of that. We can look at that. So we need to go back to the 2020 race and just make sure we're over on that. If we go and look at that, we can see that it's going to be a sort of different outcome. So there we go. The 7 swing states here, those are really crucial. Go according to that polling we talked about. Give that to Donald Trump. Give Georgia as well. And Harris takes these as well. And you give that to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump becomes president again. That's how tight this is in those 7 battleground states. But having said that, there could always be the odd surprise. Look at this. So that's the battleground states, but look at the polling in a recent poll, very impactful poll suggests Harris might have a slim lead. And that's not something we had really been looking at, and that could change the nature of this race slightly. So when it comes to watching those results come in, those 7 battleground states are where to look. There could always be the odd surprise.
Tom, thank you. Well, our special Election Night live programme will be on your screens at 10 o'clock tonight. Here's a flavour of what's in store.
It's the final countdown. The wait is almost over. Americans have been casting their votes on who they want to be the next president of the United States. We'll bring you all the action as it unfolds in every state with our US correspondent, Mark Stone, who's been at the heart of this story for years.
And of course, we'll have Lewis Goodall, who will be guiding us through the key battleground states and the counties that will decide this at our big data screen. For America Votes, election night is from 10 p.m.
So do make sure to tune in to watch Mark, Yalda and the rest of the team. Special coverage of the results starts from 10 p.m. until we have a winner. You are watching Sky News. Coming up, we'll be back with more coverage of the US election. First, Jane Secker here with the rest of the day's news.
Are you ready to make your voices heard?
As America votes,
stateside as we get close to the act
and bring you the results as they arrive.
with full reaction and comprehensive analysis, guiding you through the night.
In an election which could have huge consequences around the world.
Print our shirts, the cost to buy our shirts. It really gets to the point, how much can you charge for a t-shirt to your customers so the goods is bingo.
You think it's going to turn around?
His economy was pretty good when he.
All right, let's talk to these guys here because they say their top issue is the border. Tell me why.
We have young children. And every day you turn on the news and you see scary things happening, and it's happening everywhere. So too close to home.
Paternal instinct kicking in.
States where the people could vote.
Jackie. Your issue also the border.
Yes, I'm a teacher, so I'm very protective. Grow up in the environment like we all did, that sense of community, and not have to fear that stuff coming in.
And this is Terry Mirth. What is it?
Terry Mirth.
Terry, you're a grandma. Tell me about your thoughts on the election from the perspective of a grandmother.
Well, I want my grandchildren to grow up the way my children did and the way I did in a free country, to be able to do the things that you want to do and not to have to worry about all the wokeness that now has become the norm. We also need to take care of our veterans. We need to take care of our senior citizens, and I don't want to see that money going toward illegal immigrants. We need to close that border, and we need to close it right away.
All right, you're hearing that from Pennsylvania, the state that might decide this election. A little later, we're going to have Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, with us, and I think he's going to flip some pancakes. So stay with us. Back to you guys.
All right. Thank you, Rachel. They're doing a lot of work. Kane as somebody who walks backwards. This is something pretty.
He's live at the Sweet Spot in Concord, North Carolina. Now it will.
Sweet Spot.
I didn't realize Brian had patented walking. So I don't have any copyright infringements. You know, I was thinking last night, guys, Brian Ainsley, Steve Lawrence, I was thinking about this election, and one of the issues that we don't, I think, talk enough about is we're hiring ex-commander-in-chief, and often these are defined by something they don't see coming. That's often safety, security on the world stage. I've got veterans all around me. I've got Jim, a Korean War veteran, Mike, a Vietnam veteran. Thank you guys for your service. Mike, tell me what's important to you in this election.
Well, first of all, I'd like to see us get a commander-in-chief that'll get our military back to the level it should be. Also, I'd like to have a commander-in-chief that our allies respect and a commander-in-chief that our enemies respect and fear. That's what in this country.
I appreciate your service. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jim. So Glenn, by the way, Glenn's a Vietnam War vet. Thank you, Glenn. What do you feel about this election and when it comes to hiring a commander-in-chief?
The past ones that Donald Trump had he just didn't realize what Washington was like. And the generals in the Pentagon, they're only there to get promoted. So they're more political than they are warriors. And he needs to find the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff.
And you feel like he's the right one to be commander-in-chief?
Absolutely.
Here we go. You know, we're doing a little horse race politics here. I was asking everybody how they feel about North Carolina. One of the big concerns is, well, the Republican Governor Mark Robinson not looking good. How could that affect Donald Trump? But Donnie said that you're not worried about the effect of the governor's race on the presidential race.
I'm not especially here in North Carolina. Normally, Trump won in 2016 and 2020, but we got a Democratic governor. So I think the party gets split on the ticket.
Happens a lot.
It does, and here is especially. I think Trump has a lot of support here, and it won't necessarily affect the rest of the rest of the ticket. Won't affect him.
I mean, it's a split state. Happens a lot here in North Carolina. Finally, I heard Rachel talking in Pennsylvania. It is the #1 issue, no matter which state you go into, and that's the economy. Lori was telling me about the biggest issues for you voting.
One of my issues is I used to pay for my insurance, and suddenly I have to pay by monthly. And when I moved here 8 years ago, I was paying 79.99 cents for eggs, and now they're up to $3 a dozen.
Right. And your mom lives with you, Joan. Good morning, Joan.
One of my thing is the economy and I'm a senior and I have Social Security. However, I am blessed because I have other resources and I live with my daughter. But my insurance in the car has gone up almost double in the last 3 years. And I don't know how seniors can keep up with this.
We were talking about this. How do you manage fixed income with this kind of inflation? It's almost impossible. But that's where we are right now in North Carolina. Polls are open in North Carolina. People out there have left. Some have left to go to the polls. Now we're going to leave North Carolina and go back to you in New York.
Thank you very much. In North Carolina, the great state of New Hampshire. In 2020, Joe Biden swept. But last night, at the stroke of midnight, all residents came in to top 3 for Donald, 3 for Joe Biden. Split right down the middle, just like the whole country.
Last year it was 8.
Last year
Now
it was
it's
6. Well, actually, 2016 it was 8.
And
Yeah, you had 2 that voted for Hillary, 4 for Trump, 1 for Gary Johnson, 1 for Mitt Romney. Then 2020, Biden got the 6th vote.
Got them all.
And now 2 people passed.
Some people
away, 2 people died. I mean, two people moved.
I find fascinating New Hampshire, Virginia, maybe Kansas, Minnesota,
It's in the
all those that don't get heavily polled.
Yeah.
And you wonder, I remember Governor Sununu about a month ago came in and said, I don't know why there's not more Trump infrastructure in New Hampshire because it's wide open, because they're angry at the Democrats for pulling that first primary out. And I think that matters a lot. So I'm very curious to see those late pushes into New Hampshire by J.D. Vance. I think the president went there once. If it's going to produce anything. Well, Pete, the polls are going to close there at 9 o'clock Eastern time, but they won't probably finish counting until tomorrow. So people are going to be on pins and needles in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I know, especially in the city of Milwaukee, where it's traditionally taken a lot more time. And that's a part of the concern for voters here. Will the vote outside of Milwaukee be large enough to overcome what happens in that city? And then how long is the delay in that city as well? So voters here enthusiastic this morning, for sure. Because as we said before, it's true. The polls don't matter anymore. The pundits don't matter anymore. It is we the people on election day. And in Wisconsin, they're voting for a lot of people. I mean, a lot of eyes on your state tonight. So, Steve, what are your, first of all, what issue motivated you to go to the polls? Or you're going to the polls in an hour.
Yes, I'll be there first thing right after breakfast, and securing the border, foreign policy, election integrity. It's all really, really important. And I'm voting for Trump and Hovde.
And we're going to have Eric Hovde on the program in a little bit. How you feeling about, give our viewers, how you feeling about Wisconsin this cycle?
Well, I really think Trump and Hovde think the Republican are going to win. With this current. Yeah.
Jenny, you and your husband voted early. You helped your sons submit absentee ballots. They're in college, so you banked 4 votes already.
There's been a lot of interest in us, of course, because we're a swing state, and I've seen a lot more ground activity than we have in the past. And a lot of Wisconsin.
Issue that you and your husband are voting on behalf of all strong, intelligent women. What matters the most to you?
It's the economy. We have 3 boys. One just finished, and he's has a great job living at home, trying to careers, and can get a job and afford things. So that's
really is the basics, isn't it?
Basics. That's just afford things at the grocery store like we used to. So yeah.
You heard there more ground activity in Wisconsin than we've seen before. And Will, you've talked to some great vets, and thank you for their service. We've got one here too. Sir, what's your name?
Jack Seguin. Yeah. Hi.
Jack, what'd you do in the military?
I served during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I used to shoot missiles and knock planes out of the sky, and I don't want to see them landing here. And I'm afraid that these people do not stand up to other foreign leaders like Trump does and tells them where to go. And that's what we need. We need people who are respected by our enemies and will calm down. And Trump's good at that.
There we go. Sir, thank you for your service. Appreciate you. Absolutely. All right, there it is from Waukesha, Wisconsin at the Coop. Come on out if you're in the area. A lot of folks heading to the polls in about, 50 minutes here.
That's right.
Nice,
Pete. Thank you very much. We're covering it all. But last night I was watching as late as I could. I watched the second to last rally, and President Trump just said, I have the greatest kids. Can they just come up here? Yeah. And can they all come up?
Oh, he did that in the I watched the last one. He did it in that one too.
Yeah. So I just saw him. I felt like it was really unusual for Trump and ad lib, but he just understands. One thing he didn't point out is whatever you think about Trump or whatever happens, that family has sacrificed a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about their kids going to school, and there's, of course, the people, 74 million people voted for him, but if 70, 80 million didn't. And that ripples throughout the family. And they basically had to put the business on hold. That's what they do for a living.
Right.
So they've been together and they haven't fractured.
I also think it highlights the contrast of ending the campaign with family, because for so many Americans, that's what it's about. It's about the family. It's about being able to afford certain things. It's about the safety of their family. Right. And you compare and contrast that to the way that Kamala Harris decided to end her campaign with the celebrity.
Today is the day that we send a loud and clear message to the mainstream media, to the establishment, to Hollywood, to the swamp, that it is not them.
Thank you, guys. Today, when you wake up with not very much sleep, you got to get to the polls. You know who's standing on the stage at 2 a.m.? It's Donald Trump. Our fighter, and it's that man right there.
My father has never stopped, and he will never stop working for you guys.
So Donald Trump wrapped up the campaign at that particular town. He said, maybe I'm a little superstitious. I don't know.
Very superstitious.
I was reading, and this is a jaw-dropping number, but the Daily Mail said that essentially during the last 10 years, Donald Trump has done 900 rallies. So last night he would have wrapped up about the 900th Meantime, Lawrence, you were talking a little bit about Kamala Harris. She went knocking on doors in Pennsylvania. She was also with a bunch of celebrities like Lady Gaga, Oprah, Ricky, Roots, Katy Perry. We got a snippet of her wrap up, also in Pennsylvania, right here.
And the aspirations and the dreams of the American people. And we know it is time for a new generation in America.
If we don't show up tomorrow, it is entirely possible that we will not have the opportunity to ever cast a ballot again.
I cast my vote for someone who will be president for all Americans.
Maria? Hi. Hi. Yes. Oh my God. I'm good. Dave, it's the day before the election. I just wanted to come by and say I loved it when you voted.
No, they had
Look who's here.
For safety reasons, they have to vet them. So she's going to the houses probably that had Kamala stickers or whatever in their front yard, people that they knew were going to support her and be happy to see her. But Donald Trump could do the same thing and people would go crazy to see him. Look, I was in a taxi and the driver was saying, is Donald Trump really going to take away our tax your Social Security check? Every ad I'm seeing, he's going to ban abortion. That's not true. He sent it back to the states. Every ad says he's attached to Project 2025. That is not true. It is all these lies that they're spreading to get people scared. It's a scare tactic to get them to go to the polls. And then bringing out the celebrities. The celebrities cannot relate to the average American. Did y'all see the lady on Instagram? She was on Laura Ingram's show. She was crying and saying, husband's working job after job, taking anything he can. My child hurt her eye. She had to go, we went to 3 doctors. It costs like $150, $100, $300. She said, so when these celebrities tell me that I should vote with my heart and it should be emotional, she said, we can't afford anything. She said, we were debt-free under Donald Trump, and now our credit cards are maxed out.
I was watching CNN a little bit, and they said, isn't this getting a little eerie? Is exactly what Hillary Clinton did at the end. So at the very least, if you're superstitious, why are you doing the same thing by closing with celebrities? You get big crowds and it gets you delusional that they like you. They're for the celebrities.
Well, she was the daughter of Martin Luther King Jr., Bernice King, said, hey, there's a deep fake video out there that shows my father endorsing Donald Trump. She said that's fake and asked that it be deleted. But we've seen...
Everybody knows that too.
Right. He died decades ago. So the other thing is...
I mean, that's not funny, but it's funny that people would believe that.
In January, though, we saw robocalls where artificial intelligence also made it seem like Joe Biden is calling me up and saying, don't vote. So that's why, and I'm sure you've seen the coverage here on the channel, the FBI's got a command post. They're set up if there's any trouble. But at the same time, there's a lot, just know there's a lot of misinformation out there.
And the lines are going to be long today. Wait in line, vote. If you're upset, think about all the diners and barbershops that we've gone, people complaining about the current circumstance. Yeah. This is the opportunity to do something about it. Right. You cannot look at the polls. You can't say, this is the final poll, is what you do today.
And make sure when you vote, we talked to someone here on our staff that voted, and there are 2 columns for Donald Trump because he's with 2 different parties.
Conservative and Republican.
Conservative columns for Kamala Harris, and this person's from both sides, so the vote doesn't count.
That's
so make sure you only vote once for each candidate.
That's right. I just got a message, if I can just share. Babe Ruth is going to endorse Trump.
Is that a fact?
Yeah, that's good. So that's pretty good. He's a slugger. If you don't vote, you can't complain. Right. And I tell you, America likes to complain. Right, but not Fred and Martha.
No.
They're going to be doing special coverage for us today at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be great.
You can't say their names without hearing that music.
This is true.
Hey, even in the hall. Every time you say their name, you just hear the music go out.
Also, House Speaker Mike Johnson is on the ground with Rachel in Battleground, Pennsylvania, talking to the senators this election day.
I do well with Hispanics. A poll just came out. I'm at 56% with Hispanics compared to this woman who is at 36%.
With your vote, we're going to win Pennsylvania, and we're going to defeat Kamala and those radical left.
We are not going back because America is ready for a fresh start. Need to vote Pennsylvania. You make the difference in this.
Former President Trump and VP Harris back in Pennsylvania hours before the polls open, looking to win over key voters, including the over 500,000 Latinos in the Commonwealth who helped decide to
Well, Fox and Friends, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, live from the swing state right now. Rachel, take it away.
Hey guys, it's so great to be here. Johnson. Before we get into my first question, you and I were flipping pancakes. By the way, he didn't know he had to wait for the bubbles before he flipped, but I
do
taught
hash
him.
browns. I don't do pancakes.
All right, so we did the pancake thing. You've been with the president. You told me he said to you that he was going to leave nothing on the table.
Yeah, about 7 weeks ago, we were backstage at the Washington Hilton, and he had done, I think, 5 events in 3 states that day. We were touching gloves before we went out to separate and do the swing states again. And he got up, buttoned his coat. His staff said, "Sir, we got to go. The pilots are going to time out." And I just told him, I said, "Mr. President, your stamina inspires all of us. It's amazing. You don't have to do this. You have a great life. You know, you're taking literal bullets for the country." You know what he told me? He said, "Mike, we have to put it all on the field." He said, I said, "Sir, that is so inspiring." So the next morning, we had all the House Republicans together for breakfast, and I told them that story. And I said, if our nominee for president leave it all and work every day, he told his staff to book every hour of every day until the election. You've seen he's done it.
Yeah.
If he can do that, we have to do the same. All of us have to do the same for the country.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about the Hispanic vote because,
Yes.
as you know, there was that unfortunate joke at the at Madison Square Garden. The Democrats really tried to capitalize that on that. The Hispanic vote, very important in the state. What are you seeing? You've been here on the ground.
I have been everywhere. We've been in Pennsylvania, of course, but I've done campaigns in over 200 cities across 40 states. We did 2 in Virginia yesterday. We've been all over the place. So there are people coming to the events, Rachel, that have never been there before. And I think the Hispanic and Latino vote is going to be historic this time. I think there's going to be a demographic shift. I think they're coming our way because they see the Democratic Party has abandoned the values of the community and opened the border wide. And that frustrates that community as much as anybody. I think that'd be a big, we're going to.
I was just it's going to happen in the state of Pennsylvania.
I think we can. Is Trump going to win?
What's the Trump shot at a clean sweep of all the swing states? And just be honest with us. We're here.
Listen, my gut tells me that we are going to outperform the polls. Everybody says it's a toss. If that's true, Trump always outperforms the polls. I believe it. But I want to say every single vote counts, especially in swing states. Nothing for granted. We need every single vote today.
All right. Well, there's some folks that have some questions for you, Speaker. So we're going to start with you, Bob.
Yes. Hi, Mr. Speaker. Welcome to Allentown. The energy policies that as they are now, if President Trump gets in, do you feel that we have a great opportunity to not only become energy independent, but energy dominant?
Absolutely, we do. I'm from an energy state, Louisiana. I live on top of the Haynesville Shale, one of the biggest natural gas plays. We need to frack. Don't we? Do y'all agree with that? Yes. President Trump does as well, and he knows that that's the key not only to our economy, energy policy, but also energy policy is national security policy because it's tied directly to our ability to compete on the world stage and to trade with our partners. Our European allies need LNG exports desperately. President Trump will turn the spigots back on.
All right. This is April. April, what's your question for the Speaker?
How do you feel about prices now going up, down with Trump hopefully Trump getting elected?
Yeah, no matter where I am around the country, the number one concern is the cost of living and the border, those two things, but usually cost of living. Moms and dads having to get second and third jobs just to put groceries on the table. It's not sustainable. So what President Trump will do in a Republican-led Congress, because we got to win the Senate and the House as well, I think we will, is that we'll turn the economy back on. We'll unleash the free market again. How? We extend the Trump-era tax cuts, and then we take a blowtorch to the regulatory state, okay? We're going to get the government off the backs of job creators and entrepreneurs and risk takers, and that is what will unleash the economy again, like we did in the first Trump administration?
You know, it's been interesting. The economy and inflation, definitely the number one issue. But I was fascinated when I was right here in this restaurant. So many people said the border was their top issue. And it was crime and it was illegality. But I also got the sense that it's the sense of fairness, especially when I talked to some of the Latino voters in here who went through the process legally.
Yeah. Well, that's right. I mean, people are so concerned about the open border. It's been a catastrophe to the country in so many ways. Fentanyl is the leading cause of death now for Americans age 18 to 49 flowing over the border. All these problems.
We got one more question from this guy. Come on over
hey,
here.
buddy.
What's your name? Caleb. Caleb, what's your question for the speaker?
As Speaker, how would you support Donald Trump?
How would I support Donald Trump? Every single day, buddy. Every single day. President Trump and I have a great relationship. We've been working together for about 8 years, and he's got big plans for the country, and we're going to help him implement that. You watch football? You a football fan? He's going to be like the head coach. I'm the quarterback. We're going to score. Okay?
Awesome. Back to you guys. That was awesome, Caleb. Thanks. He's got his fight sweatshirt on.
Yeah.
Thanks, you guys.
Hey.
Right back to you.
Hey, Rachel, could the speaker, if Donald Trump was watching him at the diner, what he would think of Speaker Johnson's performance as Donald Trump?
Oh, do you want me to ask the speaker that?
Yeah, tell him.
They want Donald Trump. They want you to do an impersonation of Donald Trump.
Good.
Come on.
Mike, you got to make it too big to rig. We got to make it too big to rig. That's the thing. That's right. All of us. Look, every single vote.
Baby.
We just need a beautiful in there somewhere. Right?
All right.
Big, beautiful wall.
Very nice. You get that? Go back to Brian Yinnis. Brian, apologies. We had a little snafu earlier, but there you are.
Hey, good morning, guys. That's right. All of the eyes of the world, the eyes of this country are on Pennsylvania and Bucks County. And as we were saying, there was a huge line this morning right before the polls opened. And I got to say, it's been very smooth. Everyone's going in and out. We did speak to the first person in line who got here at 5:20 in the morning. And he's a 73-year-old retired guy, Bill Effing. He's gone for former President Trump. And then we also found an 18-year-old voting in his first election. He, too, is going for the former president. This is what they had to say.
President Trump has me very excited about the country and a different path for the country. And I think he's the way.
I'm going to go Trump because I want to make sure our country is strong. And I mean, it's the only option because if we go the other way, then I want to talk about what's going to happen.
So here in Penn, the count is also beginning with the mail ballots. This is a live look inside the warehouse in Philadelphia, where 195,000 mail ballots will start to be processed. It already started at 7 o'clock this morning. Now begin to open up these envelopes for the mail ballots at 7 a.m. Take a ballot and flatten it out. Result here right at 8 o'clock. They have better equipment, experience, and there are far fewer mail ballots than there were in 2020. So they expect this process to be quicker. The polls close at 8 p.m. The electoral votes 9 close here at 8 p.m. There will be what's called a blue mirage. That is that all these mail ballots that have been processed beginning at 7 a.m., they will be tallied quickly. And so it'll look like the Democrats are ahead quicker. And then as the night goes on, more mixed ballots. Guys.
We saw a little of that last time. All right. Brian, thank you very much from a foggy Pennsylvania.
Could come down to that state.
No kidding. Breakfast with Friends continues across the swing state. Pete gets the pulse of the people over pancakes in Wisconsin, and Will takes us to North Carolina, where he's in the.
Where are you from?
Glen Ellen, Illinois.
And did you vote?
Yes.
Did you want to say hi to anybody?
I do want to say hi to my lovely wife.
All right, nicely done. Your name?
I'm Jen.
Where are you from?
Jersey City.
And did you vote?
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent news. Let's take a look at the rest of the country. Here in New York, not a big deal, but we are worried about swing states like Michigan. We could see the potential of showers and thunderstorms, as well as Wisconsin, where we could see rain in the forecast and a little bit of snow. So those are the two areas that I'm watching in terms of swing states, but we don't have any severe rain in the western part of the state, so we'll continue to keep you up to date. There it is. There is North Carolina, where we go over to Will, my friend, at a diner eating and meeting the folks. Hi, Will. Hi, everybody.
Hey, Janice. Good morning to you. Welcome to North Carolina, down the road from Annapolis, the home of Dale Earnhardt. That's where Phil's from. And Phil and I were just talking about this is the big day. People here have said they voted this morning. They voted early. Some saying this is their tradition. They're going to vote this evening. What's the most important issue as you're voting, Phil?
The economy, always the economy. This current administration has attacked the oil and gas industry ever since. Inflation didn't have to be this bad, but everything is delivered by truck.
You tell me, Phil. Exactly. It started overnight when they attacked oil and gas. And even if you don't drive a car, it impacts your food prices, everything is transported in America. I found that fascinating. Julian Ray first. Rachel, where are you from?
Scotland.
But you're an American citizen now.
Yes, I am.
And you came through the southern border?
I did.
She's from Scotland, American citizen. And Julie's lived all over. Julie, you lived in Latin America, and that informs your decision today.
Very much so. I have lived in Peru, Argentina, and Mexico, and I've seen firsthand and lived the experience, what happens when the liberals take over and socialism takes over. For current day,
who you support president?
Trump all the way. I supported him in 2000, and I flew from for conservative and his
fascinating world experiences from them both. But let's be local. North Carolina, right? It's been in the news, not just today, but the devastation in Western. Yeah. Caroline was telling me about the turnout in the mountains from people who were a part of that devastation.
The turnout. Well, the mountain people are kind of a peculiar people, and they show up when they are devastated. And they were devastated that the government and FEMA did not show up to help. And so they're going to, if they can, they're going to turn out to vote to change the vote.
Western North Carolina going to show up. I want to share two things with you before I go. So Tyler, first of all, show me this. Pennsylvania, and his mom's in the background. Tyler's mom.
الحمد لله بقيت اتعافى يعني. تحفة. نبيض اللي هي بورلاند دي احط لها حته كده من نفسها عشان ابقى روقت عليها وهي نازله الجنب. خبرتي الضعيفه بقى في المطبخ يا جماعه ان البيض بيتقلي او سمنه، فانا بفكر اقلب سمنه كده عشان ايه نتغذى اليومين دول. يلا بينا. نجيب معلقه بقى تانية خالص. مش عارف انا متوتر ليه رغم ان انا حاسس ان انا انجزت حاجه كويسه.
She's not genuine at all.
During this whole election cycle, everything that you've heard, you've witnessed, you've felt, did you feel any anxiety?
Oh, I have anxiety in total. I mean, I just waited over an hour and a half to vote. Anxiety, not knowing what's going to happen to our country, not knowing the way the government has control lies in today's election.
How do you control your anxiety? How do you deal with it?
Breathing, therapy, educating yourself, being prepared.
In terms of issues, again, we talked a lot about them in the beginning. Which issues do you feel had the greatest impact on this election, and why?
Sorry, say that again.
Which issues do you think had the greatest impact on this election, and why?
I think everything values of what Trump's running for is the value of everybody that's voting for him.
Lastly, on the issues that you believe your candidate Trump will accomplish the most if he's elected, what issues do you think he'll accomplish?
I think he's going to secure the border. I think that the stock market is going to change for the better. I believe that with Kennedy, they are going to put better quality food into the stores that are available for people. I think that they're going to take chemicals. I think they're going to listen to the people to try and let us live the American dream. Not being able to go to the store and afford our groceries is key, but affording quality of groceries is what I think every American deserves to have.
And lastly, do you think a president, him or herself, can do all of that?
Yes.
You think that the office is that powerful?
I do.
You do?
I absolutely do.
Why do you think that it's more of a give and take between Congress and the president, or
Trump has a team able to delegate and making sure things get done from the people that he listens to. If he's listening from the people and the people are letting him know that these are the problems, he's able to delegate and put the people in charge of what needs to happen. So yeah, I definitely believe that Trump has better power as well, better empathetic and genuine to the people, where they're not relating behind the scenes and or changing the narrative. I definitely believe Trump can do that.
Great. Anything else that I'm not asking you? You want to add about who you voted for and why?
No.
Okay, great.
Trump.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Could I?
I don't do great with interviews. So
No, you were fine. I
I'm,
just wanted to ask.
no, it's fine. I know, but we're not going to do that. Remember, we're very first. Everybody has the right to vote as long as it's around. What about that? You're up there. Can I bring you over this way? Yeah.
Hello and welcome to USA 2024 on the road. I'm James Matthews in a car park at Kinston Jet Center in North Carolina, awaiting the arrival of Donald Trump.
And I'm Yusra Al-Bagher in Dearborn, Michigan.
And I'm Shingi Maruke in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yusra, Shingi, welcome to the podcast. You're on opposite sides of the United States this week, yeah?
Yeah, so I'm in sunny Phoenix, which is the Grand Canyon state and slightly different to the north of England in a lot of ways.
Michigan has been interesting. The cars are big, the portions of food are big, and it's been a really cool time just speaking to voters here. And what keeps coming up is just how uncertain things are, how people feel quite nervous about what might happen and how it will directly affect them and their families.
It's interesting you're talking to at Dobbins Lookout above Phoenix. People are open and fairly honest about how they feel about this election and the broader state of American society.
Are they loving that London accent?
Most of the time, yeah, it helps with trying to get voxes for sure. I just go, yeah, I'm from London. And they're like, okay, we'll talk to you for 2 seconds.
Milk it for all it's worth. Yusra, we'll come back to you in a bit to hear more about your adventures in Michigan. Shingi, you've been in Arizona, as you say. You've been speaking with a group of voters who've been making headlines.
Yeah, that's right. We've been speaking to Latin American voters who make up 1 in 4 voters here in Arizona. And it's so interesting talking to people who are in the only swing state by the border, this borders Mexico, about their concerns around immigration and the economy. Those 2 things came up quite a lot.
Refer to the Google Maps, please.
There's no reception that we have to do it. On Friday night, we went to Dobbins Lookout, which is about a 30-minute drive from Phoenix. It's a view overlooking the city that loads of people go to get a snatch of the sunset. It's very much the Arizona you might see depicted in popular culture. Lots of cacti, lots of rock formations. It's quite rugged and it's really scenic. And the people up there were from
Decision
lots of
time
different
in
ages
the
and
United
demographics.
States as America votes for its next president. I'm Anna Botting, live in Washington with the very latest on the US election. Well, across this country, people are now casting their ballots after Donald Trump and Kamala Harris delivered their final campaign messages.
She's been exposed, she's been exposed. She's a radical left lunatic.
Are we ready to vote? Are we ready to win? Well, this afternoon, Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, cast his ballot. The former president will do the same shortly. We'll bring you that moment live.
And I'm at a polling station in Atlanta, Georgia, one of the key battleground states set to decide the race for the White House.
The race for the White House is the tightest for decades. We'll bring you every twist and turn on Election Day.
This week after falling ill with a chest infection. Prince William prepares to deliver a landmark speech on the environment during his visit to South Africa. We'll bring you that live this hour.
And coming up on Business Live with me, Darren McCaffrey at 4:30. Centre Parks announced plans for a new £400 million village. It's first in Scotland. We'll be speaking to its chief executive.
Well, hello, good afternoon from Washington is coming to a conclusion. The main choice on the ballot, of course, Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. Well, here is the view then from Langhorne in the crucial swing state of Pennsylvania. Already we know thousands and millions of people have cast their ballots. And this is West Palm Beach, Florida, where Donald Trump is expected to vote shortly. It is at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida that he will watch. J.D. Vance spoke to the media after arriving to vote in Cincinnati, Ohio. Let's have a listen.
We do expect to win, but obviously no matter who wins, half the country, as you said, is going to be
at least partially disappointed. I think my attitude is the best way to heal the rift in the country is to try to govern the country as well as we can, create as much prosperity as we can for the American people, and remind our fellow Americans that we are all fundamentally on the same team, however we voted. I certainly hope you vote for Donald J. Trump today. I think that his policies are going to promote peace and prosperity for our citizens. But if you vote the wrong way, in my view, I'm still going to love you. I'm still going to treat you as a fellow citizen. And if I am lucky enough to be your vice president, I'm going to fight hard for your dreams and for your family over the next 4 years. We ought to argue, disagree about, persuade each other about politics. That's part of the natural process. But we can't discard friends and we can't discard family members. I think that if we all just recognize this principle, we ought to love people, we ought to be friends with people, we ought to be family members with people, regardless of their politics. That would do a lot to heal the division. I know myself. I've had a few friends who have cast their friendship aside because I decided that I wanted Donald J. Trump to be the winner in the last election and in this election. I think that's a tragedy, and I'm not going to follow that example. I'd say to everybody, whether you're voting for Donald Trump or voting for Kamala Harris, remember, friends and family, that stuff is what really, really matters. We ought to be kind to one another. We ought to treat each other with respect. And fundamentally, what we're trying to do, President Trump and I, is just build the kind of country where our fellow Americans can achieve their dreams. But that's all of our fellow Americans, regardless of who they vote for.
Well, the former President Barack Obama has taken to social media this morning to call on American voters to cast their votes for Kamala Harris.
This election is going close. In states just full of votes in every precinct could decide the winner. So you need to get out there and vote. So tell your family, talk to your neighbors, make a plan, go with your friends and vote. Vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
Right into tomorrow before the most significant results start coming. Our correspondent Cordelia Lynch joins me now from a polling station in Atlanta, Georgia, one of the battleground states expected to decide the race for the White House. Cordelia, we know that places like Georgia have broken records in terms of early voting. Do you see the same enthusiasm there for people turning up on the day?
To turn out, and they're expected to get an early result because of that. Such large numbers have they seen, over 4 million votes. I mean, we're getting a kind of potted sense Atlanta this morning. I think there is a drip of voters. We will have to see what transpires over the next few years, but there has been up to election day a lot of enthusiasm, and Anna, critical to Kamala Harris trying to keep this state in the blue lane for Democrats is her getting a big turnout amongst African American voters who historically do vote for Democrats. 4 years ago in the suburbs, they've become more affluent and more diverse. They will also be hoping they're able to chip away at the white rural vote, but it is extremely tight. One of the big questions at the moment, Hannah, is whether black men, there's a lot of kind of skepticism about that. Let's talk now to Horace. Horace, tell me, with the black male vote, what have you been noticing and hearing on the streets?
Well, I know I've heard people talk about the black male voters not turning out for Kamala Harris, or not even turning out at all. But I'm in charge of probably 141 people that we knocked on the doors, and that's not what we're hearing. What we're hearing is they are turning out. They're turning out for 2 or 3 reasons. One is food prices. The other one is women's rights. They talk a lot about the women's rights, and I don't think people overlooking that, because when we come to the door, they talk about the women's rights. They got daughters, they got sisters, they got mothers, and that really matters to them. Here in Georgia, a black lady died having a child, and they knew about that. They knew about that, and that really, really matters to them, the women's rights. And I think people are going to be shocked about that.
They have a 6-week abortion rule in the state of Georgia. Do you think that will be one of the defining issues for this state this time around?
Oh, yeah, I think that will. I really think that will. We've knocked on probably over 175,000 doors with people that haven't voted in the last 2 elections, but they're turning out now. because of that reason. And that Project 2025. They know that by heart. They got on TikTok, they got on everything they could, and they learned about Project 2025. And it doesn't include them being in America.
What do you think are some of the challenges for Kamala Harris? Because we know before Joe Biden, this was a state that was Republican for nearly 30 years.
I look at the challenge is just getting the message out. Once you got a message out, it's stuck with everybody. I don't think you have a challenge here in Georgia. I think the blame.
Do you feel there's a sense of anger in the air?
Yes, I do. I feel anger. The anger is probably towards the white females because.
So do you think actually turnout's going to be bigger than we've seen in previous elections in Atlanta?
Yes, I really do. I saw the early voting, and when we went to the door of people that haven't voted in 2 years, it was amazing how many have already voted after we notified them.
I've heard a bit of skepticism amongst particularly men around her ability to manage the economy, and that people, irrespective of the economic record, unemployment being down, the median average income of a household being up, that they just don't feel that they feel worse off after 4 years of the Democrats.
I've been knocking on, seeing people knock on doors, and we have survey questions. That has never come up. I don't know where the news is getting that about a woman not being able to do that. Most of the households are running by women, so I don't know, excuse my language, I don't know where the hell that's coming from. I think that's a makeup thing.
Horace, thank you so much for talking to us. Well, interestingly, I think in Georgia, we're expecting 75% potentially of the early vote to be counted at around 9 o'clock tonight, with a possible result, dare I say, by midnight. But we know from 2020 that there was a lot of conflict, a lot of controversy over the vote. Republicans challenging the results, and I think the election officials here are prepared for challenge time round as well, Anna.
Yes, that famous phone call from Donald Trump. I just need 11,700 votes. Give me a break. We remember that one distinctly. Worth remembering as well, Joe Biden, the first Democrat to win Georgia since 1992. The Ruby rate instead that has changed, very close. That was just by 0.23% of the vote as well. We will watch that very closely. Now, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump brought their campaigns to an end with rallies in key battleground states that will swing this election. Well, the two candidates were campaigning into the early hours of this morning. Donald Trump has been in 3 battleground states: North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. We'll have James Matthews report from Reading in Pennsylvania in a moment. But first, the state is crucial for Kamala Harris too, as it is where she spent the final hours of her campaign. Martha Kellner reports now from the Democrat grand finale in Philadelphia.
On the steps made famous by Rocky Balboa, one final round for Kamala Harris.
Good evening, Philadelphia!
A message of hope and unity on the eve of which could split this country irreparably.
We finish as we started, with optimism, with energy, with joy, knowing that we, the people, have the power to shape our future, and that we can confront any challenge we face when we do it together.
There'll be no decisive blow at this late stage. Most people have already made up their minds. The excitement is here, the momentum too, but will it lead to America's first female president?
We want to unite and represent America, and she will take care of all people.
Her agenda is for reproductive rights, for immigrants,
for LGBT, for yes, she represents the people.
If this is not a movement for the history books, I don't know what is. The way that she galvanized voters across age, race, across economics. That's amazing.
This campaign started in the most unconventional way, an election twist which stretched credulity, and to finish, a Hollywood flourish.
God bless America.
Performances from Lady Gaga, Ricky Martin, and an address by Oprah Winfrey.
Every single vote, every one is going to matter.
Maria, hi.
Harris practiced as she preached, door knocking in Pennsylvania. Her chances could rest on how many women she can turn out, especially older and independent voters.
I'm a Republican. I am voting for Kamala because she stands for everything right, truth, justice, and I'm just so sick of the hatred.
They really do think that democracy is at a brink, and that would be devastating. And I'm also for women's rights.
Harris signed off in Philadelphia, the birthplace of the United States. In the coming goes next. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Philadelphia.
Well, we are expecting Donald Trump to vote shortly alongside his wife Melania. But of course, it was thanks to influential podcaster Joe Rogan, who has a largely young male audience. And when Trump did take to the stage, he reminded voters of how close he came to death during those assassination attempts on his life earlier in the campaign. Our US correspondent James Matthews has this report.
We are approaching journey's end. For this political performer, last night was a late night curtain call.
This is the last one that we're going to have to do. And doing 4 of these in one day is a little difficult, but not really, because the love in every one of them has been incredible, just like this. So the body's here.
This was earlier in Reading, Pennsylvania. It is a movement that Trump built. They've seen his rise, fall, and rise again. In one word, what's the single most important issue for you in this election?
The border, safety,
Freedom.
immigration, life,
The economy.
freedom.
It was a final day swing through the swing states. North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and to Grand Rapids, Michigan, where Donald Trump ended his previous campaigns. None
Really
had
see
been as
something to say.
tumultuous
Take a
as
look
this.
what happened.
I smelled some floating island of garbage. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
We're leading in every state.
And I won't forget the men who died.
This doesn't have the celebrity of the Harris campaign. It's an effort built around its central character. A central demographic is the young male voter.
We've been left behind. We've been kicked down, as Oliver Anthony put it, and they're kicking us while we're down.
What he's done in the past has definitely been good for America and everybody for so long.
A little scholarship, job opportunities, so much less if you're white and Christian, because they will turn you down because of your skin color.
Trump, baby, #1.
The Donald Trump phenomenon has created this, a movement that's propelled him towards the verge of a second. Looks after today is the big uncertainty, or lose. James Matthews, Sky News, in Reading, Pennsylvania.
Well, don't forget, we are showing you pictures there on the left hand of your screen, a polling station. Alex Melania will take you there live when that happens. And don't forget, our special election night live program will be on your screens at 10 o'clock tonight. Here is a flavour of what is in store.
It's the on who they want to be the next president of the United States. We'll bring you all the action as it unfolds in every state with Mark Fenton, who's been part of this story for years.
And of course, we'll have Lewis Goodall, who will be guiding us through the key battleground states and the counties that will decide this, our big data screen. Join us for America Votes Election Night Live on Sky News from 10 p.m.
Yeah, it is so close. It is so consequential. Do make you tune in to the likes of Nodda and the rest of the team. Special coverage of the results starts from 10 p.m. until we have a winner. Plenty more on Sky News from Washington and from London. We will be back with the very latest and obviously keeping an eye on Donald Trump preparing to make his mark in this election.
Get ready for an election night like no other.
Join our team stateside as we get close to the action
and bring you the results as they arrive.
With full reaction and comprehensive analysis guiding you through the night.
In an election which could have huge consequences around the world.
America Votes. Election Night Live.
Get the full story first on Sky News.
This nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom.
A date which will live in infamy.
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Tear down this wall.
Today, our very freedom came under attack.
We are the change that we seek.
It's been the honor of my life to serve as your president.
We're going to make America great again.
This is a country of possibilities.
There have been 46 presidents of the United States. Who will be next in the White House? Get the full story first on Sky News.
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Sakulas wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Sky News, get the full story first.
It's legal to let go.
Set the speed and take the hands off. I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of the screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Why only people that come to a job and
I was honest with people.
Within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war.
This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime. They don't care for that. Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and sounds of the streets to the voices of people who make the major big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Buckingham Palace says the Queen will miss the rest of her engagements this week due to a chest infection. Our royal correspondent Laura Bundock has more.
We've had a short statement from the palace talking about this. It simply says that the Queen, period of rest. With great regret, Her Majesty has therefore had to withdraw from her engagements for this week, but she very much hopes to be recovered in time to attend this weekend's remembrance events as normal. She apologises to all those who may be inconvenienced or disappointed as a result. Now you can see there, the King and Queen have just recently returned from their tour of Australia and then Samoa, where they attended CHOGM, the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. They stopped off on the way back at a private Indian health spa for a private break to break up that long flight home. And at some point, we understand she is at home recovering privately. We don't know exactly what kind of infection she has or how she's being treated, but it is her hope that she will be there at the Cenotaph on Sunday. It's one of those big set piece events in the royal calendar, the King leading the nation in that act of remembrance. So the Queen traditionally stands on the balcony to watch over the Cenotaph, and with her, aside next to her this year, expecting the Princess of Wales in an unusual sort of appearance. Remember, she's been off work for a very long time since her cancer diagnosis and subsequent treatment. So for now, though, Camilla won't be out and about this week. She's due to attend.
Точку в итоге поставил Верховный суд Соединенных Штатов. Это было, если я не ошибаюсь, 17 декабря 2000 года. Да, сколько времени? 6, 5, первый вторник после первого понедельника, как он называется, и 17 декабря. Что угодно может случиться, гадать бессмысленно, аналитики, по-моему, все подняли белые флаги. Единственное, на что еще как-то люди стараются ориентироваться, это на рынок ставок. Ну, там тоже все гуляло, но в последнее время букмекеры вроде как опять стали чуть больше предпочтения отдавать победе республиканцев, 56%, 58%. Но это все сферические такие конструкции, ее привязаны. Считать его ключом к разрешению и внутренних проблем, интересующих нас, проблем Соединенных Штатов. Соединенных Штатов. Trochę to wygląda jak dzień spotkania. Niewykluczone podejdzie do nas z całym mnóstwo kamer. Cały dyskusyjny kamer, które są tutaj. Pan pokazuje teraz, że właśnie rozmawia tutaj przejście.
Here we go. You just went through. He just went through. Okay. What's wrong? All right, everybody, assume their position just for a second. Let me see where you want to go. Where are you going? How's that? What's your... First one's right there.
Ждем, просто стоим. Huh? Вон снайпер стоит. Да вон снайпер. Так если бы это говорю, вон стоит. Снял? Сними, вон снайпер.
to the states, as you know. I believe in exceptions, as Ronald Reagan did. And we did a great job. We did something that they've wanted to do for 52 years. Yes, please. Well, it'll be just that. We want to bring everybody in. We want to be very inclusive, and we will be very inclusive. We have a great country, but we have a country that's in trouble. It's in big trouble in many ways, and we have to straighten it out. We have crime is through the roof. We have people pouring through our borders that are not 13,000 people convicted of murder. We don't need this in our country. We have enough difficulty. We don't need that. So people saw that, and it just seems that the conservatives are voting very powerfully. Just finish it up. No, I feel confident. I have, we went in with lead today, and it looks like Republicans have shown up in force. So we'll see how it turns out. But it seems that they have really shown up in force. I just got a call from Dan Patrick in Texas. He said they've never seen anything like it. It's been very good. Look, regrets. You always have regrets. I can't think of any, to be honest, to use her expression. I can't think of any. Look, I ran a great campaign. I think it was maybe the best of the three. We did great in the first one. We did much better in the second one, but something happened. And this was the best. I would say this was the best campaign we ran.
Do you accept the possibility that you and Vice President Harris both might not get to 270 electoral votes by the end of tonight?
Should never happen. A thing like that should never happen. This election should be over. They spend all this money on machines. And frankly, if they'd use paper ballots, it would be over by now. And by the way, the paper ballots would cost 8%. If they would use paper ballots, voter ID, proof of citizenship, and one-day voting, it would all be over by 10 o'clock in the evening. It's crazy. They use these very expensive computers, and I'm hearing in Pennsylvania they won't have an answer till 2 or 3 days from now. I think it's an absolute outrage if that's the case. Now, maybe it'll be later, but it's paper ballots in France. They went paper ballots because the mail-in was not working. It was corrupt. And in France, they went paper ballots. And at 10 o'clock in the evening, they had 37 million votes counted and done. They had a winner, they had a loser. And in this country, I mean, I'm just hearing that in certain states, it's going to be a long time, and it won't even be close. It won't even be that close. They say, I'm going to win the state, but it's going to take a long time to certify it.
Could you see a world where you don't declare victory tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing the same things that you're hearing. I'm hearing states where I'm up by a lot, but they won't have a final number for a long time. Watching the results and so forth. So we're going to have a very special group of people, many of whom you know, and they'll be at Mar-a-Lago. In addition, we'll have 4,000 or 5,000 people at the convention center. On the assumption I win, I mean, I don't know if something else happens. I don't know what's going to happen in terms of declaring victory, but if in normal times I would go over to the convention center, let's say at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock or something, but I just don't know. It looks like we have a very substantial lead. It looks like we have many more Republicans voting today than Democrats. So if you have a lead and we have a bigger vote, that means you're doing very well, but they have to call a winner. They should, and they should call a winner. Yes. Just stop talking about that. Go ahead. Oh, I don't know. I was honored to get Joe Rogan last night. I mean, Joe Rogan's a big deal. He's a very respected person. And I must tell you, Megyn was fantastic. She got up and said some things that were really pretty amazing. But before that, I just think we ran a good campaign. I had good policy. We want people to come into our country, but they have to come in legally. You know, we want strong borders, and We want people to come in. We want to be totally inclusive, but they have to come in. I think that was a big issue. To me, that was the biggest issue. I may be wrong. You know, a lot of people said inflation. Inflation's a disaster, but I think it's a second issue. I think the first is the border. We can't allow criminals to be put back into our country or to be put into our country. So you have 13,000 plus murderers allowed to roam in our country. Not going to be allowed. They have to go. You have drug dealers. You have terrorists. You have a tremendous amount of people that should not be in our country, and we need strong border in this country. And I think people are voting. I think it's personally, I think it's the number one issue. We'll see how it pans out, but I think it's the number one issue. I don't have to tell them that. I don't have to tell them that there'll be no violence. Of course, there'll be no violence. My supporters are not violent people. I don't have to tell them that. And I certainly don't want any violence, but I certainly don't have to tell. These are great people. These are people that believe in no violence. Unlike your question, you believe in violence. Well, I think I'll be at Mar-a-Lago for the most part. We have a lot of political professionals. I'm going over now with Melania, who I'm very proud of. She's got the #1 bestseller. Can you believe that? He can believe it. But so we're very proud of the job she's done with that. The book is #1. But we're going to go over to the office in West Palm, and we're going to say hello to the workers. They've worked very hard. I think so. I mean, I hear we're doing very well there in Georgia. I hear we're doing very well. I hear we're doing very well everywhere. Now, I may regret that statement, but I'm hearing that we're doing very well. Would you go louder? I haven't prepared a speech. No. I did speeches last night, all day long, all night long. At 2 o'clock in the morning, we left. And, we did a lot of speeches. You can probably tell. No, I don't have to do that. You know, I'm not a Democrat. I'm able to make a speech on pretty quick notice. If I win, I know what I'm going to say, and I don't even want to think about the losing part. I like to actually just say it. It takes a while. I'd like to just make the Republicans to stay on. Democrats like they can leave, but I'd like the Republicans to stay on line. I have no pressure whatsoever. I'm winning big cases. Those cases are all being won. The biggest case was the Florida case, and it's been won. I appreciate your nice question. No pressure whatsoever.
For nine years. Regardless of what happens tonight, is this your last campaign? Are you done after this?
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so. Sad and very fulfilled. I think we're going to have a very big victory today.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, we're already a transition team, but I don't like talking about that until I find out how we do. I mean, well, it doesn't. Look, we're not looking to do damage to Iran, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. So, you know, my terms are very easy. They can't have a nuclear weapon. I'd like them to be a very successful country, but they just can't have a nuclear weapon. Well, I think a little bit tougher, to put it mildly. I see more machine guns than I've ever seen in my life. We're surrounded by, I feel very confident with Secret Service. I think they've stepped up. Look, for a long time, they didn't give us the help. They didn't give us the assets, as they say, the manpower, woman power. They didn't give it to us. And we'd have rallies. You saw the rallies, 50, 60,000 people. And I'd have less people than him. So they should have done a much better job. And frankly, the president should make a very strong statement to the outside world, because I think my team is incredible. Look, they say it's the best run campaign they've seen. Some people said it's the best run campaign they've ever seen. But in order to make that stick, you have to win.
How do you feel compared to your past campaigns? Are you more confident now than you were about your team than you were in the last 2 races?
My team, I'm very confident in. Many of them are the same players. As you know, Susie, a lot of the people are the same players. They've been very good.
Mr. President, Oprah said at Harris's rally last night, quote, if we don't show up tomorrow, it is entirely possible we won't be able to count the ballot.
I think it's ridiculous. You know, Oprah, I was one of her last shows, and they picked the biggest people and all of that, and made a big deal. And I'm disappointed. I think Oprah's become a major divider in our country, and I think, frankly, she should be ashamed of herself. And you know who else should be ashamed? Fox, because I've seen Oprah on Fox about 50 times making the same statement, and I think it's a disgrace what Fox does, because everyone thinks Fox is so pro-Trump. They're not pro-Trump at all. They've put Oprah on all morning long. That's all I see is Oprah. And, you know, I knew Oprah very well. She's been in Mar-a-Lago many times. Roger King had his funeral. That's the head of King World, which was Oprah's mentor. And Oprah chose the location. She said, Mar-a-Lago is the most beautiful place. Would it be possible to have Roger's funeral in Mar-a-Lago in the ballroom? We did it. Only time I've ever had a funeral there. And I think Oprah should be ashamed of herself to say that. She should be ashamed. She knows me. She wanted to run with me as the vice president. She was going to be the vice president. She wrote me a letter. It's in the book. And now she goes to make statements like that. She's a divider. And Barack Hussein Obama is a divider too.
People who are concerned that you didn't concede the election in 2020, they're concerned.
If it's a fair election, I'd be the first one to acknowledge it. And I think it's, well, so far, I think it's been fair. I think there's been a lot of court cases, both sides are, and part of that is because we have too complicated a process. If we had a piece of paper watermarked, you know that paper is more sophisticated now than computers. It's watermarked paper. You cannot, it's unbelievable what happens with it. There's nothing you can do to cheat. And it costs you practically nothing to run. Think of it. We spend hundreds and billions of dollars on these campaigns. You could do it for 8% of the cost and have accuracy, and we wouldn't have to be worried about when is Pennsylvania going to announce. It's really a shame. Well, he knows exactly what, but that's only based on what RFK told. I don't think RFK wanted that. You're talking about, let me tell you, he's a great guy, RFK, and he's going to do pretty much what he wants as far as I'm concerned. He wants health for women, for men, for children. And I happen to agree with a lot of the things he says. The one thing I told him, and I've told you in speeches for the last 2 weeks, we got to keep him away from the liquid gold, because the liquid, we have any of it, it's called oil and gas. That one I'm going to handle. Well, I'd be honored to have him. I've spoken to Howard about that. Well, if you think of it, he came in third, you know, in running for president, right? He ran a very good race. He had obstacles. The Democrats just really unfairly put obstacles up. And Henson Kennedy left the Democrat Party for the Republicans. Now, he's a very smart guy. He's a very caring guy. He's very popular, too. We get up and introduce him. The place goes well. Love having him. And you know who else we love having? Elon. He's been great. And everybody, look, everybody. Getting Joe Rogan last night and Megyn Kelly. We just have, this is very inclusive. This is a movement. This is the greatest political movement in the history of our country. And even you people, and some of you are fair sometimes, but it's the greatest movement in the history of our country. And I've made that statement 1,000 times. It has never been challenged. It is the greatest movement, and we're going to make America great again. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. Nice to see you.
There we go.
It is 5 o'clock. I'm watching. This is the NewsHour live from Washington as America heads to the polls, including, as you saw there, Donald Trump. It is a historic presidential election which remains too close to call between Trump and Harris. Well, in the past few minutes, Donald Trump has been speaking to reporters as he voted in Palm Beach in Florida.
No, I feel very confident. I have felt, we went in with a very big lead today, and it looks like Republicans have shown up in force.
We've already had the first official result from the small town of Dixville Notch in New Hampshire, both candidates securing 3 votes each. But it could take a matter of days before we get a full picture on how the rest of the United States has voted. And who the next occupant of the White House will be. We will bring you all the key moments of Election Day.
I'm Jane Secker, also ahead on the NewsHour. She withdraws from her engagements this week. Buckingham Palace says she has a chest infection. And the father of Sarah Sheriff gives evidence in her murder trial, claiming he tried to prevent her death.
Hello there. Good evening from Washington, where the race to become the 47th president of the United States remains on a razor-thin margin. Millions of Americans are casting their votes across all states today. More than 80 million others made their choice before Election Day, Democratic hopeful Kamala Harris. But in the past few minutes, her Republican rival Donald Trump has visited a polling station in Palm Beach in Florida. But given how close the contest is, it might be some days before a final result is declared. Well, this report comes from our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn.
A fitting finale to what's been the craziest, most over-the-top US election anyone can remember. And at the small township of Dixville Notch, population 6, the first to declare a count, a fitting result too.
3 for Kamala Harris, 3 for Donald Trump.
In a country split right down the middle. Whatever the outcome, this election makes history. Either Kamala Harris becomes the first woman to take the White House, or after his extraordinary comeback, Donald Trump becomes the first convicted felon to do so. He cast his vote in person, joining the millions of other Americans pouring into schools, town halls and polling stations to do the same. And the closest contest in living memory. Both campaigns need to get out their vote like never before. The former president tweeting this, lined...
Well, we will duck out of that momentarily. We will return to it. But let's head now to Prince William in South Africa.
Needed about this crisis. While these international